start with our first passage this morning, and it is taken from 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 6. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 6. For it is the God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God. Where? In the face of Jesus Christ. So we cannot know the glory of God, we cannot know God's character the way it should be known, except, like the verse says, to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. No one else but Jesus Christ. Now the next verse we look at is concerning, we look at the next verse, the glory of God is His character of agape love. Now, in Hebrews chapter 1 verse 3, we read that Jesus is what? Jesus is the brightness of God's glory. And what? The express image of His person. So Jesus is what? The brightness of God's glory and the express image of His person. So if you really want to know the true God the way it should be known, we cannot know it outside of exactly what is stated here in Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 3. Now the next passage we're going to look at is something that we have to look at exactly the way the Old Testament is going to show us what is stated there, and then we're going to see through Jesus Christ how we are to understand what was stated there. So we'll start with this first verse here, and this is taken from Genesis 32 and verse 30. And this verse is taken after Jacob wrestled with God. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for what it says, for I have seen, Jacob is stating this, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. So he's saying, he what? He saw God face to face. And we're going to see what this means. How at times we can grossly misinterpret what has been stated unless we look at Jesus to find the proper understanding of this. So here again I'll state it, for I have seen God face to face. And the next statement he says, and my life is saved. Which means to say what Jacob is thinking, that if you look at God face to face, and what he knew, what meant that if he looked at God face to face, death would be the result. So here, by him stating that, and my life is preserved, he had this grossly erroneous understanding. And we will see why that is important for us to know. Next verse we look at, and we are focusing on this whole issue of looking at God face to face. Here then, and I'm going to just read the verses, and I'm not going to give too much of the background. In verse Exodus 24, we'll look at verses 9 to 11. Then Moses went up also Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they saw what? They saw the God of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone, and it was like the very heavens in its clarity. But on the nobles of the children of Israel, he did not lay his hand. So they saw, again the statement there, so they saw God, and they ate and drank. So here again, it is telling us that they saw God. I'm sorry. Oh boy. Sorry about this. I'm having difficulty reading it. Yes, I'm having difficulty reading this because my glasses are not showing it well. Okay, I'm looking at Exodus 33, verse 18 to 20. And we are reading here again. And he said to me, show me your glory. Then he said, I will make, this is Moses asking and then God saying, then he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will have compassion of whom I will have compassion. But he said, you cannot, please pay attention to this verse, but he said, you cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live. So there, when Jacob had that experience, and here, what is being stated again? But he said, you cannot see my face, for no man shall see my face and live. So what does that mean now? That no one will see my face and live. And we will see as we continue how clear this whole issue of looking at God face. Now this portion I'm going to read, we're going to go back and look at this again, but here I'm starting with verse 5 of Numbers chapter 12. Then the Lord came down in the pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both went forth. Then he said, hear now my words. This is God's now speaking to Aaron and Miriam. Hear now my words. Is there a prophet among you? I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so. Please see what here God is stating. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. So what we have been told here is that Moses, this is God speaking, not so with my servant Moses. I want us to pay attention to this word that is stated. My servant Moses. And we will see how important this statement is. My servant Moses, and then this statement. He is faithful in all my house. And we will see what this means, my house, or God's house, or another house. There are two different kinds of houses, and we'll see what is involved in them. Then here, I speak, God is stating, I speak with Moses, I speak with him face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings, and he sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Again, God is bringing this out. Against my servant Moses. And in the first part of verse 8, I speak with him, how? Face to face. After the death, and I'm going to now read again with this whole issue of Moses as a servant. Joshua 1 and 2. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, what does it say? Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. And my emphasizing, the reason I brought these verses out, to make sure that where we are going, you'll be able to understand why I'm bringing this out. Again, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. Now here we go. With this emphasis, we looked at Moses as a servant. What does it mean spiritually when someone has the mind of a servant? God clearly identified Moses as a servant. So we must make sure that we have understood this. And Jesus gives us the answer. What does it mean to be a servant? And Jesus is the one that gives us the answer. We're going to look at John chapter 15, verses 9 to 15. Please pay attention to what we're going to do now. We have made it very clear in reference to the house, then also my servant, Moses, and now we're going to see from here how Jesus is going to give us an understanding here on. That is very important. So starting with verse 9. As the Father loved me, I also have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandment and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be what? Be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. Not anybody else, but whatever I command you. Sorry, hold on. No. You are my friend if you do whatever I command you. So here, Jesus has used a word. What does he use the word? You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. So we cannot be Jesus' friend unless what? We do what he commands us. No longer, please listen to, look at this verse now. No longer do I call you what? Servants. I no longer call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends. For all things that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you. So the only way that we can know God the way God should be known, through the person of Jesus Christ. That's what he's saying here. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. To tie this up properly, we're going to look at Hebrews chapter 3, from verses 1 to 6. In the light of what we have just discussed, we saw Moses as a what? Servant. Then Jesus states that you are no longer, you are my friend, you are no longer what? Servant. Because a servant what? Does not know what his master is doing. And who was their master? Jesus Christ. And we are going somewhere with this, and you will see as we proceed how important this is. So we're going to look at Hebrews chapter 3 verses 1 to 6. Therefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider who? Consider the apostle and high priest of our confession, Christ Jesus. If you've got the heavenly calling, we are going to consider the apostle and high priest of our confession. Not anybody else, but the person, again, of Jesus Christ. Who was faithful to him. Who was what? He was faithful to, who's the him? God. He was faithful to God, who appointed him as what? As Moses also was faithful in all his house. So please keep this in mind. Moses was faithful in his house. And that we will see the difference between Moses' house and the house that Jesus is talking of. There's a difference. For this one has been counted of Jesus, for this one has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses. Can you see what the writer of Hebrews is stating here? For this one, who's this one? The person of Jesus Christ. For this one has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, inasmuch as he who built the house has more glory than the house. And again, the house, we will see what it means. And I read this verse again. For this one has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, that is Jesus and Moses, inasmuch as he who built the house has more glory than the house. The next verse we're going to look at now is verse 4. For every house is built by someone, but he who built all things is God. So he who built all things is God. Verse 5. And Moses indeed was faithful again in all his house as a what? As a servant. Moses was faithful in all his house as a servant for a testimony of those things which would be spoken afterwards. And I want us to make sure that we have seen the difference here, what the writer of Hebrews is stating. And Moses indeed was faithful in all his house as a servant for a testimony of those things that will be spoken afterwards. And we are heading to what is going to be spoken afterwards. Okay? But Christ as a son over his own house. See the difference now? Moses as a servant over his house, and here Jesus Christ as a son over his own house. And to know what this house means, that verse says, whose house we are. How are we his house? As a group of people that have focused on the person of Jesus Christ to know the face of God. So, but Christ as a son over his own house, whose house we are, if we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm to the end. Now, I'm going to Deuteronomy chapter 18, and we look at 3 verses, 15, 18, and 19. The Lord, your God, this is Moses speaking, and Moses is telling the children of Israel, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren, him you shall what? Hear. Okay? He's the one that you should hear. I will raise up, verse 18, I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among the brethren. This is God stating here, I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. All that I command him. And it shall be that whoever will not hear my word which he speaks in my name, I will require it of him. The next passage we're going to look at again, we're going back to Numbers 12. And the reason I'm bringing this back in again, because now we're going to move and see something very important. Back to Numbers 12 and verses 5 to 8. Then the Lord came down in the pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both went forward. Then he said, hear my words. Is there a prophet among you? I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so, again, not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him again. I'm repeating this, and we've looked at this before. I speak with him face to face, even plainly and not in dark, saying, and he sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Okay? So we look at Moses. Now we'll see what John wrote in John chapter 1 verse 17 and verse 18. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through whom? Jesus Christ. The law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. This verse, and I'm going to bring out a few other verses to tie up what we're looking at here in verse 18. No one has seen God at any time. What's going on here? No one has seen God at any time. But we looked at all those verses before. Moses spoke to, God himself said, Moses did what? Spoke to me face to face. Jacob, face to face. So what is going on here now? No one has seen God at any time, even though they saw God face to face. But John here is telling us, no one has seen God at any time. What does that mean? That is so important for us to understand what that means. Because they saw God face to face. That means to say there was something that was missing. Even though they saw God face to face, but there was something missing. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who's in the bosom of the Father, he has declared it. In verse 17 it says, for the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Again, I'm going to read verses from John 5:37 and 38. And the Father himself, this is Jesus now speaking, and the Father himself who sent me has testified of me. You have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his form. So what's going on here? Jesus is stating, but that you have not even what? Seen him. And we'll see what all that means. But you do not have his word abiding in you, because whom he sent, him you do not believe. Which means to say we have to what? Believe in exactly all what Jesus taught. John 6:46. Not that anyone has what? Seen the Father. Can you see what's going on here? Again, and this is Jesus speaking. Not that anyone has seen the Father, but we saw Moses saw the Father, God, face to face. That's why the verse is so clear. Saw God face to face. But here, Jesus is saying, not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from God. He has seen the Father. Most assuredly I say to you, he who believes in me has everlasting life. Which means to say what? Jesus is what? The face of God. So if you want to know the truth, if you want to be set free from every bondage that we are under, and we're going to see again that whole issue of bondage, that if we want to be free, and our Sabbath class was talking of freedom, then if you are to be free, what does that mean? You will not be under bondage. If you are freed from bondage, you are free indeed. Next verse we're going to look at is John 14:7. And this is now Jesus speaking. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. And from now on you know him and what? And have seen him. So Jesus is telling his disciples that what? If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. And from now on you know him and have seen him. So when Moses, and God said Moses spoke to him face to face, and Jacob with his experience with God face to face, what is this all talking of? Dear ones, what it is trying to tell us, and this is Jesus speaking, not any other writers, not even the New Testament writers. Jesus himself is telling us something of great significance. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also, and from now on you know him and have seen him. So Moses saw Father, Jacob saw God, but they did not know what? They did not know God the way Jesus revealed God. And that's why the whole world needs nobody else but the person of Jesus Christ. This is what Jesus is stating and telling us. That if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Let's look at the next verse. Sorry. Here Jesus is speaking in the Beatitudes. Blessed are what? The pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the what? Pure in heart, they shall see God. So which means to say, the only way our hearts can become pure to know God is through what? The work of the Holy Spirit in our lives showing us what? The Holy Spirit does what work? He points us to who? To the person of Jesus Christ. So again, it is so important. Blessed are the pure. We cannot have a pure heart except through Jesus Christ. None of us can have a pure heart except through Jesus Christ. Now, look at what Psalm writes. In the light of what we have just looked at, blessed are the pure in heart, they shall see God. Now, when we have the pure heart and a clean heart, look what ends up happening. Because we have that pure heart, we have that agape love in us, we have the mercy of God in us. With the merciful, you will show yourself merciful. If you know God the way it should be known, then what happens? You will show yourself merciful. With a blameless man, you will show yourself blameless. We cannot be showing these things unless we've had that pure in heart. Verse 26. With the pure, you will show yourself pure, which means to say, when we have that pure in heart, we will see God as what? Pure. With the pure, you will show yourself pure, and with the devious, you will show yourself shrewd. So what we project on God is going to come back to us. That's what it's saying. With the pure, you will show yourself pure, and with the devious, you will show yourself in a warped way, in a distorted way. I'm going to skip the next verse. And here in Exodus 22, I want us to pay attention to this now. I am the Lord your God who brought you what? Out of the house of bond, out of the land of Egypt, and out of the house of bondage. And we discussed in the Sabbath class about freedom. So here, there is a house of bondage. So if you're not in the house that Jesus Christ built, if you don't belong to the community of believers that Jesus Christ has built, then what we are? We belong to the house of bondage. Which means to say we still have the mind that symbolically represents Egypt. Sorry about this. I hope I don't get this again this way. A house of bondage belongs to, we must pay attention. We've got the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The house of bondage belongs to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Everything that Pastor Aaron was discussing of freedom. We cannot have freedom if we are living by the principle from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Freedom only will come to us from the tree of life. House of bondage belongs to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then when it says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage, you shall have no other gods before me. Other gods that are being worshipped is nobody else but Satan and his emissaries. They are the ones that is being worshipped. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole passage because of a constraint of time. I'll go to this passage here. We can skip and go to Genesis chapter 3 verse 10. Genesis chapter 3 verse 10. So he said, this is Adam. So he said, I heard your voice in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. What happened to Adam and Eve? And especially here Adam is telling us that after they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they were no longer free. They were in bondage to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And what ended up happening to them once they were in bondage to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Fear came into them. Fear came into them. The negative fear came to them. Fear belongs to the house of bondage. Fear does not belong to the people that are really and truly free. I'll have to close with this here now. And I hope that we have seen very clearly that only through the person of Jesus Christ we can experience true freedom. Only through Jesus that we become friends. We are no longer what? Servants. Because a servant does not know what his master is doing. We are friends. And what the Bible has taught us, and all what we have looked at this morning, is teaching us that we have to look at God through the lens of Jesus. If not, then we are still in bondage and we are servants and not friends. So that's what it means when we are not seeing God face to face. I mean, even though we are seeing God face to face, spiritually, we are still servants and not friends.